Manhunt 2 is a third-person stealth horror game where you play as Danny, as he's released from a mental hospital and goes on a killing spree to find out about the past that was kept from him. The game is available on PC, Nintendo Wii, PlayStation 2, and PSP. Atmosphere. The atmosphere starts off really strong inside the asylum, as Danny leaves his cell unarmed and vulnerable, with the guards and orderlies violently beating the patients around him. There's beaten bodies and bloodstains up and down the checkered floors, and the patients respond accordingly, violently attacking the guards in turn. And in the time it takes for Danny to escape from his cell to him leaving the asylum, he becomes a killer too.
Snap out of it, Danny! Fruitcake!
The game seems considerably less punishing than the first game, and your assailants or victims are much easier to defeat without requiring the game's stealth. Not quite as tenacious or relentless in their pursuit, which gives a lot of room for mistakes and does generally lead to less intense encounters. The game's environments range from run-down sex clubs to shady motels, but also office buildings and a movie set. The game doesn't consistently stick to the same grungy, nasty vibe that the original did, but what dramatically changes the feeling of each level is whether or not you have a gun, since using melee weapons and lurking in the shadows is still tense as you pick off your aggressors one by one, but using guns turns every level into a bloodbath as you pop heads and gun down everyone who gets in your way. It's an odd juxtaposition, and the power fantasy of being a gun-toting maniac that I can't deny was enjoyable dropped most of the tension from the game, as it seemed far too easy to destroy your foes at a distance, and was oftentimes just really fun. This kind of leaves the atmosphere with rare pockets of tension amongst what would otherwise be just a gory third-person shooter. It's far from a bad time, but the only thing that ties the atmosphere loosely to horror overall is the soundtrack, and the feeling that you're destroying your own life by continuing down this dark path of cold-blooded murder, even if it's in self-defense. Manhunt 2 is a little all over the place, from its eclectic environments to the unbalanced gameplay. It's far from bad, but it's not exactly close to atmospheric. That's no Harry Masons.
Hope you got a lot more killing in you.
Scares. The game's scares are extremely few and far between, with just a few minor jump scares that crop up throughout the game, and the possibility for things to go wrong during the stealth sections. Again, thanks to how easy it was to outsmart the enemy AI and get infinite use, instant kill weapons, there's very little to be afraid of, and once you get a gun it seems like the enemies should be afraid of you. There are a few scripted events, but thanks to the game's atmosphere being what it is, they rarely landed or even paid attention to if you had things to kill. The game didn't really try to scare the player much at all, and it shows. That's still no Harry Masons. Sound design. The soundtrack is full of warbling, dark ambient pieces, the sort of things you hear saturating your nightmares, unsettling flourishes of odd sounds that play over a dead dirge or a shrill feeling of emptiness, the crying of a ghost or something akin to the stars dying. It's all extremely haunting. It's a surprisingly good soundtrack that isn't utilized or felt much in the game at all thanks to the gameplay. Some of the tracks do merge together, but they're all providing a similar feel.
It was either them or you. Remember that.
The rest of the game's audio is pretty decent, with the sound effects being pretty slick and sickening, like the sound of a body hitting the floor or a head popping when you pull off a headshot. The special kills you can do also had disturbingly realistic audio in places. The sound space is as good as the original was, and the directional audio, which is really important in a game like this, also works perfectly well. The dialogue for a lot of the enemies was very stereotypical and a bit cliche, with some of them being downright silly, but other characters like Leo and the Doctor were considerably better. There were some genuinely great pieces of voice acting in the game, but most of the time you just heard enemy dialogue which didn't really compare.
Is this my house?
Yes, it was torched. Pickman's orders.
And those were my kids?
Yes, and they are fine, by the way.
And my wife? What?
This is going to be painful, Danny, but I think you should see for yourself.
There's not much reverb in the game, but that wasn't a huge issue, and otherwise Manhunt 2's audio did a pretty good job. That's one Harry Mason.
Lock and load.
Gore. The game's gore is as legendary as the first game, with a lot of deeply unpleasant and gnarly kills, smashing heads and breaking people's backs in with a hammer. Though the big loss was that the gameplay's dominant strategy fought hard against the experimentation of kills, style points don't really matter, and you don't get rewards or praise for performing gorier kills, which pushes you to performing the fastest kill possible using the most common reusable weapon, unless your curiosity got you to try otherwise. Which means there's only intrinsic value to trying to eke out more violent kill animations. There are special environmental kills this time around, and some of them were extremely gruesome, but again, the reward was just being able to see them, and they were quite difficult to set up or get enemies in the right area to perform them. The gun kills led to exploded heads, and there was a disturbing amount of detail in the PS2 models, with bits of teeth lodged in the broken stump of a head that was unpleasant to see. Really though, Manhunt 2's gore was pretty awesome, but the game didn't encourage you or reward you enough to choose to be gory over being efficient. That's 2 Harry Masons. Story. You play as Danny, a confused amnesiac who was unexpectedly set free in a mental hospital with no memory of his past. Shortly after release, he's pushed into going on a rampage of self-defense and self-discovery by his friend Leo, who encourages Danny to take his anger out on the project, a secret experiment they were both part of that Leo claims wronged them both, encouraging Danny to hunt down its members and kill them. The story was surprisingly good, though most of the major plot twists were fairly obvious and I ended up figuring them out long before they were meant to be revealed. But there was also some enemy dialogue you could overhear that gave away major plot points far too early as well. The game jumps forwards and backwards to different points in time and tries its best to gaslight you into believing the wrong thing, and the multiple choice ending leaves Danny room for redemption even if his actions throughout the game would state otherwise. Manhunt 2's story is far better than I was anticipating, but probably not that original or unique overall, making the final score 3 out of 5 Harry Masons. I had a shocking amount of fun with this game, and despite me complaining about the guns destroying the horror, they were an absolute blast. It's not a great horror game, but I'd much prefer playing this again than having another go at the first installment. Again, I'd like to remind you this whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I felt a little bad for all the murders, I didn't give them a single chance, and I advise you don't either. There will be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. Let's go check out Bumps in the middle of the night. Peace.